My name is Alice Parker. I'm 30 years old. Last Tuesday, I sat alone in my office in Seattle and listened to 43 voicemails from my family, people I hadn't spoken to in 7 years. Not one of them said, "I'm sorry." Every single one said the same two words. 7 years ago, I walked out of my mother's house with $200 in cash, one suitcase, and the clothes I was wearing. That was it. No plan, no safety net, just a decision I couldn't undo. After I left, my family told everyone in our town that I was unstable, that I needed help, that they were worried sick about me. They weren't worried. They were relieved. And they would have stayed relieved if my sister hadn't typed my name into Google last week. Before we go any further, take a moment to subscribe, but only if this story truly resonates with you. I'd really love to know where you're listening from and what the temperature is like there right now. Just so you know, this is a fictional story. Some elements have been enhanced with the help of AI to deepen the emotional impact and create a more immersive experience for you. Now, let me take a deep breath and tell you what really happened. Thanksgiving, 2019. A small town called Briar Glen, Pennsylvania. Population barely over 5,000. The kind of place where people know your business before you do, and somehow still get it wrong. Thanksgiving at our house meant my mother's expensive china laid across a table too long for the dining room. 15 relatives squeezed shoulder to shoulder. My father pouring wine like silence was something you could drown. I was 23, working 2 jobs, waiting tables at a diner off Route 9 and answering calls at a local property office during the day, saving everything I could. My older sister, Lauren, had just gotten promoted. Marketing assistant turned marketing coordinator at some regional firm. Same paycheck. New title, but in our house. That made her extraordinary. My mother stood at the head of the table and raised her glass. "To Lauren," she said, smiling like she'd just won something. "Our pride and joy. The one who always makes this family look good." 15 people lifted their glasses. I lifted mine too. No one asked about me. Not my jobs. Not my classes. Not my plans. I could have disappeared from that table and the only difference would have been an empty chair. I was background noise in my own life, but I didn't come to that dinner to be seen. I came with one question, a simple one. I waited until dessert when the plates were half cleared and conversation softened into that comfortable overlap of voices. "Mom," I said, "I wanted to ask, is there anything left from Grandma Eleanor's education fund?" The room went quiet. Not the gentle kind of quiet. The kind that feels like something just snapped and everyone heard it. My mother slowly set her cup down. She looked at me. Then she looked around the table. And when she spoke, her voice was sweet enough to make your teeth hurt. "See," she said softly, "this is what I've been dealing with. She's been acting unstable for months." I didn't react. I just sat there. Pumpkin pie untouched in front of me. 15 pairs of eyes shifting toward me like I had just ruined something sacred. My Aunt Carol leaned in and squeezed my hand. "Honey," she whispered, "your mother just wants what's best for you." I nodded. Then I stood up and walked into the kitchen. And like every family gathering before that, I started doing the dishes, because that's what I did. I cleaned, while everyone else celebrated. The water was running, but I could still hear their voices drifting in from the dining room. My mother's voice dropped lower. "She doesn't need that money. she said. We used it for Lauren, her car, her tuition extras. Alice wasn't going anywhere anyway. I froze, turned off the faucet. Grandma Eleanor had set aside $12,000 for each of us. She told me herself 2 years before she passed, held my hands at her kitchen table and said, "This is yours, sweetheart. No one can take it from you." Someone did. I walked back into the dining room. My mother was pouring herself another glass of wine. That money was mine. I said, "Grandma left it for me. You had no right to touch it." She didn't flinch. She set the bottle down slowly, folded her hands, tilted her head the way she always did, right before she rewrote reality. "You're being dramatic, Alice," she said calmly. "You always do this. You always turn everything into a problem about money." I held her gaze. "I'm asking about $12,000 that was left to me, by name." And that's when everything started to break. "And I'm telling you," my mother continued, her voice calm and cutting, "you sound exactly like your grandmother, always creating problems out of nothing." That stopped me cold, because my grandmother, Eleanor, was the kindest person I had ever known, and the way my mother said her name, it sounded like something she wanted to wipe off her shoe. 10 minutes later, she called everyone into the living room. I knew what was coming. I had seen this performance before. Different holidays, different excuses, same script. My mother, Margaret Parker, standing in the center like a concerned actress on a stage no one paid for, but everyone showed up to watch. "I didn't want to say anything," she began, dabbing the corner of her eye with a napkin. "But I think the family deserves to know. Alice hasn't been well. She's been unstable. I've been trying to help her quietly. But tonight," she gestured toward me like I was evidence. I looked at my father. Thomas Parker sat in his chair, hands resting on his knees, eyes fixed on the carpet like there was something written there he needed to memorize. He said nothing. I looked at my younger brother, Ethan. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He gave a small nod. Not to me. To her. I looked at Lauren. She didn't even look up. Just kept scrolling on her phone like this had nothing to do with her. 15 people in that room. Not one asked if I was okay. Not one questioned her. Not one. I turned around and walked upstairs. No tears. No shouting. Just silence. I packed a suitcase. Threw in whatever I could grab. My winter coat. A few clothes. The $200 I had saved from tips at the diner. And the small wooden box my grandmother had left me. It had been sitting on my dresser for 2 years. Unopened. Because opening it meant accepting she was really gone. I carried it with me anyway, when I came back downstairs. The room was still full, still watching. My mother's voice followed me as I walked toward the door. "If you leave," she said sharply, "don't bother coming back." I didn't argue. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently, because I already knew I was never opening it again. Outside, snow was falling over Briar Glen. Cold, quiet, endless. I stood there with a suitcase, $200 and nowhere to go. That was the last time I heard my mother's voice for 7 years. I bought a bus ticket that night from a station off Highway 22. The furthest I could afford was Seattle, Washington, 36 hours on a bus. My suitcase wedged between my legs, my grandmother's box resting on my lap. I didn't sleep. I just watched the country pass by outside the window. Fields, highways, cities I would never stop in. And I tried to remember the last time someone in my family asked me a question that wasn't disguised as criticism. I couldn't. If you believe my mother was right to take the education fund and defend her actions, for whatever reason, you can comment support. But if what she did shocked you, if you can feel what I went through, then leave a stay strong as a small way of standing with me. Sometimes, a few simple words from someone who understands can mean more than you think. Somewhere outside Denver, the woman sitting next to me offered me half her sandwich. I thanked her and ate it too fast. She didn't ask why I was crying. She just handed me a napkin and looked out the window. Sometimes strangers show you more kindness in 10 seconds than family does in 23 years. Seattle, December. Rain instead of snow. I spent my first night in a women's shelter near downtown. The second week in a cheap hostel that smelled like disinfectant and exhaustion. I had no credit, no references, no connections. Just a work ethic my family had used for years and never once valued. 2 weeks later, I found a job, receptionist, a small consulting firm called Carter and Vale, 8 employees, tight space, third floor of an old brick building. They helped small communities apply for development funding. I answered phones, sorted mail, scheduled meetings. It wasn't impressive, but it was mine. 3 weeks into my new life, I made a mistake. I checked Facebook for the first time since I left, and the last. My mother had posted in the family group. The post read like something written for an audience. Not a daughter. Please keep Alice in your prayers. She's going through a difficult time, and we just hope she's safe wherever she is. We love her, and our door is always open. It had over 100 reactions. Comments filled with sympathy. You're such a strong mother. Margaret. Praying for your family. You've done everything you could. And right at the top, Ethan's comment. She's always been the dramatic one. 47 likes. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I deleted Facebook. That night. And I never went back. Let me tell you what no contact actually costs when you're 23 and starting from nothing. No savings, no health insurance, no emergency contact on any form. For 2 years. Every time I filled out paperwork, I wrote NA in that box because there was no one. No birthday calls, no holidays, no one to text when I got sick so badly I couldn't get off the bathroom floor for 2 days and seriously considered calling an ambulance, but didn't because I knew I couldn't afford it. And there's something else no one tells you, that constant, quiet awareness that somewhere, back in Briar Glen, there are 15 people telling a story about you, and you don't get to correct a single word. I became a ghost. A cautionary tale my mother told at church lunches. A story she could polish and present. Something tragic enough to earn sympathy. Something vague enough that no one asked too many questions. But silence gave me something too. The first morning I woke up in Seattle. Not the kind where you snap awake from anxiety. Not the kind where your chest is already tight before your eyes even open. I mean, really woke up. I lay there in that narrow hostel bed, staring at the ceiling, and realized something was missing. It took me a minute to figure out what. My mother's voice. That constant echo in my head. You're not enough. You're not enough. It was gone. like someone had finally found the switch and turned it off. At Carter and Vale. Olivia Carter noticed me before I ever thought to notice myself. In my first week, I reorganized their entire filing system. 3 years of scattered client folders, cross-referenced, color-coded, digitized. No one asked me to do it. I just couldn't stand the disorder. On Friday afternoon, Olivia walked past my desk, then stopped, then came back. You reorganized 3 years of files. In 4 days, she asked. I looked up at her. Someone who needed something to control. I said. She didn't laugh. She didn't look at me like I was strange. She pulled up a chair and sat down across from me. Tell me what else you see that isn't working, she said. And for the first time in my life, someone was asking me that question seriously, while I was building something real in Seattle. My mother was building a different version of me back in Briar Glen. I didn't know the full story at the time. I learned it later, from my Aunt Linda, from an old high school friend who found me years down the line. But I'll tell you now, so you understand what was happening behind me. Within a month of my leaving, my mother told the women at church that I was receiving treatment at a residential facility. She never said which one. She didn't have to. In a town like Briar Glen, facility only means one thing, and people will always imagine the worst version on their own. The apartment I used to rent above the bookstore on Maple Street. I had left most of my things there. Lauren took it over, sold my furniture, kept my coats, told the landlord I had abandoned everything. My father handled the neighbors, standing in the driveway, hands in his pockets, voice carefully controlled. We just hope she's safe wherever she is. He never called me. Not once. Ethan posted vague things online, quotes that sounded deep if you didn't think too hard. Family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty. Some people would rather run than grow up. Praying for those who throw everything away over nothing. Each one got likes. Dozens of them. Each one was about me. That was their version of Alice Parker, the unstable daughter. The one who snapped. The one who walked away and disappeared into something shameful no one could quite define. A story they could carry around. Show when it was useful. Collect sympathy from. For 7 years, I was gone. And they told my story like I was already dead. Year 1 in Seattle was survival. Year 2 was the first time in my life I made a plan that belonged to me. At Carter and Vale, I moved from receptionist to project coordinator in 6 months. Olivia handed me a small grant application to manage, a community garden project on the south side of the city. I turned it in 3 days early, with a revised budget that cut costs by 11%. And for the first time, someone looked at my work and saw value. Not potential, not obligation, actual value. Olivia read my report twice. Then she looked up at me, like she was recalculating something, and instead of questioning it, she handed me another project. That was how it started. I enrolled in an online business administration program through a state university. Classes at night, work during the day. I paid for everything myself, every paycheck. A portion went straight to tuition. No loans, no backup plan, just small, steady payments. My apartment was a shared 2-bedroom in an old building near Fremont. My roommate worked night shifts, so we barely saw each other. I lived quietly. I cooked every meal. Rice and eggs one day, pasta the next. Whatever was cheapest at the grocery store after that. I bought clothes from thrift shops, cut my own hair in the bathroom mirror for almost 2 years. There was no dramatic transformation, no music playing in the background, just alarms going off in the dark, coffee going cold on the desk, falling asleep with textbooks open and waking up before sunrise to do it all again. I wasn't chasing success. I was running from powerlessness. And somewhere along the way, success just followed. Olivia never treated me like I was broken. She didn't act like I was a project or someone she needed to fix. She treated me like someone who showed up early, stayed late, and noticed things others ignored. One afternoon, I flagged a billing mistake in a client account. $6,000. That was how much it would have cost the company if no one had caught it. Olivia called me into her office. "You caught something my accountant missed," she said. I shrugged slightly. "I check everything twice." She leaned back in her chair. "And why is that?" I met her eyes. "Because I grew up having to." She didn't ask anything else. She didn't need to. Olivia Carter was the kind of leader who understood something most people don't. The hungriest people aren't the ones asking for opportunity. They're the ones who've gone without it for so long that when it finally appears, they don't waste a second. And instead of talking about hunger, she gave me more work. I finished my degree at the end of my 3rd year. No ceremony, no audience. I printed my diploma at a copy shop, bought a cheap frame, and hung it above my desk at work. The next morning, Olivia knocked on my office door. By then, I had one. Small, window facing a parking lot, but it was mine. She leaned against the doorframe and smiled. "Congratulations," she said. "How does project manager sound?" The company had grown by then. More clients, more staff, bigger projects. And suddenly, I was leading a team of 10 people. That same month, someone new walked into the office for an interview. Her name was Rachel Kim. She was sharp, confident, and had this kind of laugh that made people turn their heads without knowing why. She had worked in nonprofit communications before burning out and wanting something different. We connected almost immediately, not because of work, because of what we didn't talk about. 3 weeks after she started, we were sitting at my desk late at night, eating takeout after a deadline. She looked at me and asked a simple question. "Why do you never talk about your family?" I don't know why I answered. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was ready. Maybe I just didn't want to carry it alone anymore. So I told her everything. Thanksgiving, the fund, the lies, the silence, the 7 years. It was the first time I had ever said it all out loud. Rachel didn't interrupt. She didn't react halfway through. She just listened. When I finished, she sat there quietly for a moment. Then she said, almost casually, "Yeah, mine told people I died." I blinked. "What car accident?" she said. That was the story. I stared at her. She shrugged slightly. Easier than explaining to their church friends that their daughter is gay. We sat there in silence. Two people who had been erased in different ways. And for the first time since I left Briar Glen, I cried. Not quietly, not politely. Just honestly. That night, something shifted. It was also the night I finally opened the box. 5 years. I had carried it everywhere, from the shelter, to the hostel, to that tiny apartment. It sat on my nightstand every night, and every night. I didn't touch it, because opening it meant accepting two things. that my grandmother was gone, and that she had been the only person in my family who ever loved me without conditions. Rachel leaned back in her chair and nodded toward it. "You've been staring at that thing for 5 years," she said. "It's not a bomb. Open it." So I did. Inside, there was a pearl necklace, the one she wore every Sunday to church. Carefully wrapped, still shining. There was a photograph. Me at 6 years old. Gap-toothed smile. Hair uneven. Eyes bright. It was the only childhood photo I had. The only one that hadn't been thrown away or forgotten. I held it in my hands for a long time. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. My mother never kept photos of me on the walls. Lauren's school portraits lined the hallway in perfect frames, year after year, like a timeline of someone worth remembering. Mine were different. They were taken down, slipped into drawers, forgotten on purpose. Inside the box, beneath the photograph and the pearls, there was a letter, folded once. My grandmother's handwriting. Careful, slightly shaky. The kind of cursive that came from a time when writing neatly meant something about who you were. "Alice, if you're reading this, it means you found the courage to leave." Good. I wanted to leave my whole life, but I was too afraid. Don't be like me. Don't hold this family together at the cost of yourself. You don't owe anyone your life. I read it once, then again, and the third time. My hands were shaking so badly the paper trembled between my fingers. Every holiday, every dinner, every moment I stayed quiet just to keep the peace. I thought I was doing what she wanted, keeping the family together. She had said those words so many times growing up that they became something I lived by. But now I understood something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. She had only ever said that out loud in front of my mother, in that house, under that roof, where every word was being watched. This letter, hidden away in a box no one else was meant to open. This was what she really meant. There was a note at the bottom, a short line, about the education fund. I left instructions with my lawyer, Mr. Hargrove. Ask Linda. She knows. I sat there on my bed for a long time, the letter in one hand, the photo in the other, and something inside me finally settled. My grandmother hadn't asked me to stay. My mother had, and I had spent years confusing the two. By my 6th year in Seattle, Olivia called me into her office. She didn't waste time with small talk. "I want you to take on a new role," she said. I waited. "Chief Operating Officer," for a second. I thought I misheard her. The company had grown. What started as a small consulting firm had expanded into something real. More employees, more clients, bigger impact. We were working on housing development projects, community funding programs, partnerships that actually changed things, and she was offering me a seat at the top. I accepted. Not because it sounded impressive, but because I knew I had earned it. I wasn't rich. I want to be clear about that. I drove a used car, lived in a small one-bedroom apartment, had savings, health insurance, a life that was stable. But if you had asked the girl who once slept in a shelter with $200 to her name, this was more than success. This was freedom. In October, a regional business magazine published a feature on women in community development. My photo, my name, my title. A version of my story that was clean and easy to understand. Receptionist to executive, hard work, determination, the kind of narrative people like. At the office, Olivia brought in a small cake to celebrate. Rachel laughed when she saw it. "This is way too serious," she said, grabbing a fork. "We need something ridiculous next time." My life had become something I didn't feel the need to explain. It was quiet, steady, surrounded by people who respected me, work that mattered. I didn't search for my family online. I didn't check their updates. I didn't drive through Pennsylvania when I had business trips nearby. I didn't send money, didn't send messages, didn't leave doors half open. I let them go completely. Some people would call that cold. I call it survival. When you grow up as the person everyone blames, you learn something early. Distance isn't cruelty, it's oxygen. And I had spent 23 years holding my breath. For 7 years. They let me disappear just as easily. No calls, no letters, no messages passed through anyone else. Nothing. My mother told the town I was in some kind of facility, and people believed her. No one checked. No one questioned it. No one came looking. No one even searched my name. 7 years of silence, until a random Tuesday in March 2026. That was the first time my sister, Lauren, typed my name into a search engine. And it wasn't because she missed me. It wasn't because she was curious. It was because she needed money. That's the part that stayed with me. Not one person in my family had ever looked me up before that. Not once. They never wondered what happened to me, never questioned the story they were given. It's easy to believe a lie when the truth would make you uncomfortable. If you're still here, you might want to subscribe now, because this story doesn't get easier from here. 6 months before those voicemails showed up, I received an email at work. The subject line was simple: "From your Aunt Linda. Please read." I stared at it for 20 minutes before opening it. Linda was my mother's younger sister. Growing up, she was always there, quiet, polite, careful not to step out of line. She had watched everything happen to me and said nothing for years. I blamed her almost as much as the rest of them. Her email was short, 3 paragraphs, no excuses, no attempt to soften anything. She said she was sorry. Sorry for staying silent. Sorry for being afraid. Your mother has a way of removing people from her life. She wrote, and I didn't want to be next. Then she told me something that made my hands go still on the keyboard. My grandmother's education fund had been handled by a lawyer named Mr. Hargrove in Pittsburgh. There had been clear instructions: $12,000 for Lauren, $12,000 for me, separate accounts, separate signatures required. My mother forged mine, moved everything into one account, and gave it all to Lauren. Linda knew. She had been there when the documents were signed. She had witnessed it. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. $12,000 at that point in my life. It wasn't life-changing money. I had earned more than that in a few months by my second year at the firm. But that wasn't the point. The forgery, the lie, the way she stole from me, and then made me look unstable for asking about it. That was something else entirely. That was the blueprint, the foundation of everything I had grown up in. One decision that explained years of confusion. I didn't take legal action. It was too late. The statute had already run out. Linda added one more thing at the end of her message. Your mother is organizing the Briar Glen Community Fundraiser this spring. The whole town will be there. At the time. I didn't fully understand why that mattered, but I would soon enough. 2 months later, Olivia walked into my office holding her phone like she had just found something valuable. "You're not going to believe this," she said. I looked up from my laptop. "There's a pastor named Michael Grant. He runs a church in a small town back east. He's also on the board of a community development nonprofit. They're hosting a big annual fundraiser and they're looking for a keynote speaker." I didn't react at first, but when she said the town name, Briar Glen, it hit me like a siren going off in my head. "They want someone who understands community development," she continued. "Someone who has a personal connection to small town growth. I told them about you." She smiled. "You grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania." Right, I had never told her which one. She didn't know anything about my family. She didn't know that the woman organizing that fundraiser was the same woman who had stood in the living room and told 15 people I was unstable. "The event is in Briar Glen," she added. "You'd be perfect." I almost said no. The word was right there. Automatic. Easy. Safe. And then I thought about the letter. About standing in the snow. About 7 years of silence. 7 years of being a ghost in a story I didn't get to write. "I'll do it," I said. Olivia's smile widened. "Perfect. I'll send them your information." After she left, I sat there for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and searched for the event. Briar Glen Community Fundraiser. The page loaded. Committee Chair Margaret Parker. The venue was the Town Community Center on Maple Avenue. Date March 15th. I picked up my phone and texted Linda. "I know about the fundraiser. I'm the keynote speaker." Her reply came almost instantly. "I didn't tell your mother. Be careful." I stared at the message, then set my phone down. I wasn't going back the way I left. I was walking in through the front door, 2 weeks before the event, on a Tuesday afternoon. Lauren sat at her kitchen table and searched my name. I know because Linda told me everything. Lauren was 32, recently divorced, barely holding things together. Her ex had left 2 years earlier, taken half their savings, left her with a house she couldn't afford, 3 months behind on the mortgage, the bank closing in. She needed a co-signer, someone stable, someone with money, someone with a clean record. My mother's credit was ruined. My father was retired. Ethan still had debt he hadn't paid off. So she thought of me, not as a sister, not as a person, as a solution, like something you forgot you owned until you suddenly needed it. She typed my name, Alice Parker. The first result was my professional profile, Chief Operating Officer, Carter and Vale, Seattle. The second was a feature article, Emerging Leaders in Community Development. The third was the company website, my photo, my title, Speaking Engagements. A quote from Olivia calling me the operational backbone of the company. Linda said Lauren just stared at the screen, didn't blink, didn't move. Then she picked up her phone and called my mother. "Mom, you need to see this. See what Alice. She's..." A pause. "She's a COO at a real company. She's been featured in business magazines." Linda told me there was silence on the other end. Not relief, not pride, not even confusion. Just a sharp intake of breath. The kind someone makes when the truth cracks something open they've spent years holding together. "That's not possible," my mother said. But she didn't finish the sentence, because finishing it would mean admitting the story she told wasn't real. The call started that night. I was in a meeting, going over quarterly reports with my team. My phone buzzed once, then again, then again. By the time the meeting ended, I checked it. 43 missed calls, all from Pennsylvania numbers. Some I recognized, some I didn't, all within the same day. I walked back to my office, closed the door, sat down, and listened. The first voicemail was from Lauren. Light, careful, like nothing had happened. Alice. Hey, it's Lauren. I know it's been a while. I need to talk to you about something important. Call me back. The seventh was from my father. Slow, uncertain. Alice, it's Dad. Your mother and I. Things have been difficult. We could really use your help. Call us when you can. The 15th was my mother. Controlled. Measured. Alice. This is your mother. I don't know what you've been doing out there, but family is family. We need to talk. The 23rd was Ethan. Casual. Like we had spoken yesterday. Hey, Al. Looks like you're doing pretty well for yourself. That's good. Listen, I've got an idea I've been working on, and I could use some backing. Nothing crazy, just to get started. Call me. The 38th was Lauren again, and this time, her voice was different, cracking, unsteady. Alice, I know you're seeing these. I need help. Please, just call me back. Help me. 2 words, over and over again. Different voices, different tones, same meaning, and not one of them said what I had waited 7 years to hear. Help me. 2 words, over and over again. Different voices, different tones. Some calm, some desperate, some trying to sound casual like nothing was wrong, but always the same 2 words. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I was wrong. Not, I miss you. Just, help me. 43 voicemails, 0 apologies, every single one asking for something. I listened to all of them, every message, start to finish, some of them twice. Then I placed my phone on my desk, leaned back in my chair, and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then I called Rachel. She picked up on the second ring. My family found me. I said. There was a pause. Which part hurts, she asked. The part where I'm not surprised. She didn't rush to fill the silence. Rachel knew better than that. Sometimes what you need isn't comfort. It's space. 7 years. 7 years of building a life from nothing. 7 years of therapy, of working, of learning how to trust people again. And the first time they reached out, it wasn't to ask if I was okay. It wasn't to say they missed me. It was to ask what I could give them. I wasn't useful when I had nothing. But now that I had something, now I mattered. I set my phone to do not disturb. I didn't call back. I didn't block them either. Blocking would have been a reaction, and I was done reacting to them. What are you going to do? Rachel asked. Nothing different. I said. I have that fundraiser in 2 weeks. You're still going. It's my job. I said. I don't rearrange my life just because they refuse to rearrange their behavior. She let out a small laugh. All right, she said. Go show them who you are. I ended the call and looked out the window. Seattle rain tapped softly against the glass. Steady, predictable, manageable. I had handled worse. They didn't take silence well. 3 days later, an email arrived in my work inbox. My professional email, the one listed publicly on our company website. From margaret.parker.briarglynn@gmail.com. Subject: your mother, Alice. I opened it. Read it once, then again. After everything this family has done for you, you can't even return a phone call. I've spent years protecting your reputation, telling people you were getting help. And this is how you repay me. I always said you were selfish. I guess I was right. I saved it. Closed it. Didn't reply. The next day, a message came through LinkedIn. From Lauren. I see you're doing well for yourself. Congratulations. I guess. But family is family. Alice. I need a cosigner on a loan. It's not much. You owe us that. That word. Oh. It had always been their currency. Then Ethan joined in. Because he never knew how to stay quiet. He posted publicly, tagged half the family. Funny how some people get a fancy title and forget where they came from. Family supported you your whole life, and now you're too good to answer your phone. Hashtag ungrateful, hashtag family first, dozens of likes. Comments agreeing. I took screenshots of everything, the email, the message, the post. Not for legal reasons. For myself. For the mornings when doubt might creep in. When I might wonder if I had imagined it all. If maybe they weren't that bad. If maybe I should have tried harder. Proof. Something real I could hold on to. That evening, Linda texted me. They know you're the keynote speaker. Your mother found out from the event program. They're planning to be there. I stared at the message. So now I knew. They weren't just calling. They were coming. Can I be honest with you for a second? When I read Ethan's post about how family supported me my whole life, I actually laughed. Out loud. In my office. Because the most convincing lies are the ones people repeat so often. They start believing them themselves. If that sounds familiar to you. If you've ever been called ungrateful just for wanting to be treated like a person, tell me your 2 words. I read every single one. March 15th, I flew into Harrisburg, rented a car, and drove 90 minutes through gray Pennsylvania roads. Flatland, bare trees, a sky that looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. Briar Glen appeared slowly, smaller than I remembered. The bookstore, the diner, the white church steeple rising above everything else like it always had. Nothing had changed, and somehow, that made it feel like I was the one who didn't belong anymore. The community center on Maple Avenue was lit up like a wedding venue. White tablecloths, decorations everywhere. A banner stretched across the entrance. Everything polished. Everything perfect. Like the town was celebrating something worth remembering. The banner stretched across the entrance read, Building Tomorrow Together. Briar Glen Community Fundraiser. 200 seats. Almost all of them filled by the time I entered through the side door reserved for speakers. I checked in at the registration table. A volunteer looked up, smiled politely. She was around my mother's age. Familiar. In that distant way people from small towns always are. She glanced at my badge. Miss Parker. Welcome. Pastor Grant is very excited to have you. I nodded. I wondered if she recognized my name, if she remembered who I used to be, or if I had already become someone else entirely. I was dressed simply, charcoal blazer, white blouse, hair pulled back, clean, professional, untouchable. The badge on my chest read, Alice Parker, Chief Operating Officer. Carter and Vale keynote speaker through the doorway. I could see the main hall. Round tables, 8 seats each, every chair filled. Teachers, business owners, church members, neighbors. People who had spent 7 years hearing a version of me that didn't exist. And at the center table, my family. My mother sat there in a navy dress, perfectly put together, greeting guests like she owned the entire room. Margaret Parker, committee chair. My father beside her, quiet as always. Lauren dressed in something new, something she probably couldn't afford. Ethan near the buffet, half paying attention, scrolling his phone, all of them within 20 feet of me, none of them knowing what was about to happen. Pastor Michael Grant stepped up to the podium, tall, calm, the kind of voice that carried without effort. He had been the one who reached out to our firm. He didn't know me. Not really. Not the version of me that existed in this town. Good evening. Briar Glen. He began. Thank you all for being here tonight. Polite applause. The soft clink of silverware. This event is about community, about building something larger than ourselves. More nods. More smiles. Our keynote speaker tonight represents exactly that. She grew up in a small town, built her career from the ground up, and now serves as Chief Operating Officer of Carter and Vale, a firm that has impacted thousands of families across the Pacific Northwest. A pause. She was recently featured in a regional business publication recognizing rising leaders in community development. Then he smiled. Please join me in welcoming Alice Parker. Applause. I stepped out from behind the curtain and walked toward the stage. The lights hit me, and for a second, just 1 second, I was 23 again. Standing in that living room, listening to my mother explain to 15 people why I was broken. Then I looked up. 200 faces, some familiar, some not. And at the center table, 4 faces I knew better than anyone. My mother's smile disappeared. Her mouth opened slightly, closed, opened again. Her hands gripped the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her eyes moved quickly, scanning the room, checking who was watching her reaction. Even in shock, she was still performing. My father set his glass down too hard. Water spilled onto the tablecloth. His face went blank, like something he had buried years ago had just resurfaced. Lauren lifted her hand to her chest. Her lips moved. Maybe my name. Maybe nothing at all. No sound came out. Ethan froze mid-bite, fork suspended in the air like he had forgotten what he was doing. Then the room stood. All of them. 200 people rising to their feet. The same people who had heard I was unstable, who had prayed for me, who had whispered about me, now clapping, louder, longer. And my mother remained seated, frozen, the only person in the room who didn't stand. I waited, let the applause settle, adjusted the microphone, took a breath. Thank you, Pastor Grant, I said. And thank you, Briar Glen. A small pause. It's been a while. A ripple of quiet laughter. Some people exchanged glances. Some of them had started to recognize me. I delivered my speech. 20 minutes. Clear, structured, professional, community funding, development strategy, case studies, results. The kind of presentation I had given many times before. Controlled, measured, Perfect. And then, near the end, I changed direction. I grew up in a town like this, I said, letting my voice settle into the room. A few people leaned forward. Some of them already knew. Some of them were beginning to recognize me. Some of you might remember me. A ripple moved across the tables. Subtle, but enough to change the air. I left 7 years ago with $200 and a suitcase. Silence followed. Heavy. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I continued. I left because staying was costing me something I couldn't afford to lose. No one interrupted. No one shifted. I was told I was unstable, that I needed help. I paused. The truth is, the help I needed was distance. That was the moment, the shift. People stopped listening out of politeness and started listening because they had to. And everything I've built since then started with one thing. I said, someone chose to see me as a person. I let that sit. Not a problem to fix, not a story to explain, just a person. The room held its breath. Community isn't just about funding or buildings. I said, it's about seeing people clearly, not the version that's convenient, not the version that fits a narrative. The real person standing in front of you. I didn't look at my mother. I didn't need to. The silence had already done that for me. In the third row. My former teacher covered her mouth. The man beside her turned slowly toward my family's table. Then the whispers started. That's Margaret's daughter. I thought she's a COO. I finished. Stepped back. And the room stood. Not out of obligation. Out of realization. The applause lasted longer this time. Stronger. More honest. At the center table. My mother didn't stand. She stayed seated. Hands clenched. Face tight. Controlled. The networking part of the evening dissolved into something else. I stepped down from the stage and people surrounded me. Voices overlapping. Hands reaching out. We didn't know. You should be proud. Your grandmother would be so proud. I nodded. Thanked them. Listened. Then my mother appeared. Cutting through the crowd. Precise. Controlled. She stopped in front of me. Her smile locked into place. Alice, she said, opening her arms slightly. What a surprise. Why didn't you tell us you were coming? I didn't move. You had my number, I said, for 7 years. Her smile flickered, just once, then returned. You embarrassed this family, she whispered. I didn't mention anyone. I replied calmly. If people connected the dots, that's not my responsibility. Lauren stepped in. We've been trying to reach you, she said. We need to talk. I heard the voicemails. I said, all 43. Her face tightened. Not one apology. I added, just the same 2 words. I looked at her. Help me. My father stepped forward. Alice, not here. You had 7 years to choose somewhere else. I said, you didn't. Ethan came up behind them. You think you're better than us now? I shook my head. No, I think I'm done being less than you needed me to be. I stepped back, smoothed my blazer, nodded once toward Pastor Grant, and turned, walked toward the exit. No rush, no anger, no looking back. I had already done that once. I didn't need to do it again. I sat in my car for a while, hands resting on the wheel, breathing slowly through the windows. I could see people gathering inside, talking, looking toward the door. By morning, the entire town would be talking, but this time, it wouldn't be her version of me. I called Rachel. "It's done," I said. "You said everything, yes. How do you feel I thought about it?" Then answered, like I'm finally my own age. She laughed softly. That night, in my hotel room, I opened my laptop and wrote one email to all of them. I'm writing this once. I'm not co-signing loans. I'm not sending money. I'm not funding anything. I'm not angry. I'm clear. If you want a relationship with me, it doesn't start with asking for help. It starts with honesty, a real apology, for the fund, for the lies, for telling people I was broken while I was building a life. Until that happens, I wish you well. But my answer is no. I read it once, then sent it, closed the laptop, turned off the light, and lay there in the quiet. No anger, no tears. Just the calm of someone who had finally stopped negotiating with people who never valued the deal. A week after the fundraiser, I made a call I had been putting off for years. I found the number from my grandmother's lawyer, Mr. Hargrove. He was retired now, 81, living quietly in a condo outside Pittsburgh. But when I introduced myself, he remembered. "Your grandmother was an exceptional woman," he said, stronger than most people realized. He told me she had come to him personally, not because she had to, because she didn't trust my mother with the accounts. She made me promise to keep everything documented. He said. I closed my eyes for a moment, and when my mother forged my signature, I asked. There was a pause, a long exhale. I didn't know until later. He admitted. By then, it was already too late. The legal window had passed. I'm sorry. Alice, I should have done more. The money was gone. $12,000. Legally, there was nothing to recover. But I wasn't thinking about the money anymore. I was thinking about what my grandmother would have wanted. Not revenge, not repayment. Something else. Something that lasted. Legacy. A few days later, I contacted a university in Seattle, spoke with their financial aid office, and I set something up. A small annual scholarship, funded from my own salary, for students who listed no family support, not because their parents couldn't help, because their parents chose not to. I named it the Eleanor Parker Community Scholarship. The announcement was simple, 2 paragraphs on the university website. My name, my grandmother's name, and a photo. The one from the box. 6-year-old me, smiling, gap in my teeth, her hands resting on my shoulders, the pearls catching the light. It wasn't about the money. It was about rewriting the ending. My grandmother had spent her entire life staying quiet, holding everything together, living inside a system she never felt strong enough to leave. She stayed. She endured. And she died, surrounded by people who never understood her. I couldn't change her story, but I could change what came after it. Let them search that. Let them see that. 3 days after the fundraiser, Linda called me. I let it ring twice before answering. She was already crying when I picked up. I should have said something, she said. Back then, at that dinner, at every dinner, I watched what your mother did to you and I said nothing. I leaned back in my chair. You're saying something now. I said, that matters. It doesn't feel like enough. It isn't, I said honestly. But it's a start. There was silence on the line. Then she spoke again, softer. I understand. I closed my eyes briefly. I need time. I told her. I appreciate what you've said. I appreciate the warning about the fundraiser, but trust doesn't just come back because someone tells the truth once. I know, she said. Her voice steadied. Can I tell you what's been happening here since you left that night? I hesitated, then nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Go ahead. The town is talking, she said, nonstop. Everyone is asking the same thing. I didn't need her to finish. Your mother told people you were in a facility. She continued. Now they've seen you on that stage. I leaned back further in my chair. She can't go anywhere without someone bringing it up. Linda said, at the grocery store, at church, everywhere. I said nothing. Pastor Grant hasn't said anything publicly, she added. But he did call her, asked her to step down from the fundraiser committee. I let that sit. She told people it was her choice. Linda said quietly, but everyone knows. I didn't feel anything. Not satisfaction, not guilt. Just distance. Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. When you saw her take that money, when you knew she forged my signature, why didn't you stop her? The silence on the other end was immediate, heavy. Then her voice came back. Small, honest, because I was afraid she would do to me what she did to you. She said, and I regret that every day. I didn't interrupt, didn't comfort her. Because some truths aren't meant to be softened. They're meant to be heard. I believed her. Shame like that doesn't come out clean. It doesn't arrive in neat sentences or steady breaths. It catches in your throat, uneven and heavy, like something that was buried too long and finally forced its way up. We'll talk again, I said quietly. Just give me time. I will, Linda whispered. I ended the call and sat there for a while, and for the first time in years, the word family didn't feel sharp. It didn't feel like something I had to avoid. It just felt complicated. Back in Briar Glen, reputation had always been currency, and my mother had just lost hers. Not overnight, not dramatically, but slowly, quietly, like paper left out in the rain, softening at the edges until it couldn't hold its shape anymore. It started in small places, the diner, the post office, the pharmacy, Sunday mornings at church, small conversations that stretched a little longer than usual. She said her daughter was in treatment. But did you see her speak? She's a COO now. I've been praying for her all this time. No one called it gossip. It wasn't loud enough for that. It was correction. People adjusting the story they had been told. The version of me my mother created was being replaced. And this time, she wasn't in control of it, because the truth had already walked into the room and introduced itself. Pastor Grant handled it quietly. No public statement, no confrontation, but he asked my mother to step down from the committee, just for now. He said, let things settle. She told people it was her choice, that she wanted to focus on family, but in a town like that, people always know the difference between stepping down and being asked to. My father did something I never expected. He moved into the guest room. No announcement, no argument, just a quiet decision. A door closing after decades of staying open. Linda told me she overheard them one night. You lied. He said. Silence. You told people she was broken. He continued. And she stood in that room and proved you wrong without even saying your name. My mother's voice snapped back. She turned everyone against me. And then my father said something I had never heard in my life. No, he said. You did that yourself. She just showed up. It was the first honest sentence I had ever heard from him. Too late to change what happened between us, but maybe not too late for him to finally see it. Lauren lost the house, without a cosigner. Everything collapsed faster than she expected. The bank didn't wait. 60 days. That was all it took. She packed what she could, stored the rest, and moved back into my parents' house, into my old room. Linda told me that gently, like she was holding something fragile. She's sleeping in your room, she said. The one with the nail marks on the wall? I didn't answer right away. Is the height chart still there? I asked. Yeah, she said softly. No one painted over it. Lauren, the one who always had everything handed to her. The fund, the car, the attention, the certainty that things would always work out. Now 32, divorced, starting over, in a room that used to belong to the sister she never defended. Did I feel satisfaction a little? But mostly, I felt something else. Understanding. Lauren never had to struggle, never had to build anything from nothing. And when everything she depended on disappeared, there was nothing underneath. Being the favorite doesn't make you stronger. It just hides how unprepared you are. She still hadn't apologized. Linda said she was still telling people that if I had helped her, things would be different. Still blaming, still avoiding, still the same. But one night, Linda saw her standing in the doorway of that room, just standing there, running her fingers along one of the nail marks, the spot where my grandmother's photo used to hang. She didn't say anything, didn't move, just stood there, like she was trying to understand something she had ignored for too long. Ethan's consequences came differently. His girlfriend saw his post, the one calling me ungrateful, the one he thought made him right. She didn't agree. You humiliated your own sister, she told him. Linda said she packed her things while she spoke. That's not someone I want to be with. He deleted the post, but it didn't matter. Screenshots had already spread. In small towns, nothing really disappears. For the first time, Ethan learned that words don't just vanish after you say them. They stay. My father wrote to me 6 weeks later. A letter. Handwritten. Careful. Like every word had been weighed before it touched the page. Alice, I don't know if I deserve to say this, but I'm sorry. Not for your mother. For me. For staying silent. For choosing comfort over you. You deserved better. And I know that now. I read it twice, then folded it, placed it in my drawer. I didn't reply. It was the first real apology I had ever received from my family, and it came from the one who had said nothing for the longest time. 3 months later, on a quiet Sunday evening, I stood in my kitchen cooking. Rachel was laughing about something in the living room. Olivia sat on the couch with a glass of wine. A couple of coworkers were setting the table. 6 chairs, second-hand, mismatched. Mine. This was my Sunday dinner now. Every week. The same people. No expectations. No roles. Just people who chose to be there. When we sat down, I looked around the table, and I thought about another one. Longer. Louder. Full of people who never really saw me, This table was smaller, simpler, and somehow it felt like everything. My father's letter is still in my drawer. I haven't answered it. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. I'm not rushing that decision. My mother hasn't reached out again. Neither has Lauren. Ethan sent one message. Just one word. Sorry. No explanation. No follow-up. I saw it, and I let it sit there. I don't know what happens next. And for the first time, I don't need to. The door isn't locked, but it isn't open either. It just exists, waiting for something more than words. Until then, I have this life, and that is enough. There was a time I thought love meant staying, enduring, and accepting whatever was given to me just to keep the word family intact. But this journey taught me something deeper. Love without respect is just control in disguise. Walking away wasn't weakness. It was the first honest decision I ever made for myself. Choosing not to return, not to fund people who never valued me, and asking for accountability instead of accepting silence. That was me choosing self-worth over approval. If you would make the same choice I did, protect your peace, demand truth, and refuse to be used, right? I stand with you. If you believe I should have gone back, helped them, and kept the family together no matter what, right? Come back. And if you're still thinking it through, maybe caught between heart and logic, write other options. Share your story with me. I want to be your friend, someone who can share your joys and sorrows. Your voice matters more than you think. Every comment you leave could help someone out there feel less alone or find the courage to choose themselves. And if this story meant something to you, a simple subscribe, like, or share from you can carry this message further than I ever could alone. I'll see you in the next story.
Welcome to Family Confessions. Our stories go beyond entertainment, helping viewers recognize toxic behaviors, understand boundaries, and reflect on their relationships, while reinforcing self-worth and the strength to heal and move forward. Each video follows a structured workflow ensuring quality and value for our audience. Thank you for being here.